Hey guys,
Hey.
welcome back to Norwalk. We're here at Unrated Gaming. Once again, I am Regina. This is Terry. This is Bayonet. I just really like holding it. And we've got a fun round two. We have Heather versus Kyle. I actually wish I knew how to say Heather's last name properly. Right, I don't actually. Rysenga. Okay, there you go. She just coached me through it. And then Kyle Hudson. So, fun match. They're also very good friends.
Yeah.
Also very familiar scene faces to our local scene here.
Yeah, local threats around, just to watch out for. They both come up with teams that I would say are pretty creative. They like to think outside the box. So
Heather did bring that Helioptile, the Heliolist,
Yeah.
to San Diego.
that's why it's on VUC stats, right?
Yes, that is
Yeah,
why
that's-
she
that's fantastic.
wanted really badly to bring it there. And I think the only story I know about Kyle is that he water yoga Z'd with a hyper vortex.
Yes, but he played very well leading to the regional, and he's a very strong player. So I just want to see what kind of skills he and Heather would both like to show during the stream match here.
Yeah, and so we've got their teams for you on the screen right now. Kyle's team on your left with that Hydreigon, Charizard, either an X or Y variant, Metagross, Landorus Theron, Alola Ninetales, and Rotom Wash, while Heather on your right side has Metagross, Tapu Lele, Landorus Theron, Zapdos, Incineroar, and Gastrodon.
So Kyle's team is slightly less standard, while Heather's team leans more towards standard, but the Tyranitar slot has been replaced with Gastrodon to cover the rain matchup, as well as being good against Incineroar, I think. I like the way the team is adjusted from the standard framework to be better against Incineroar, which is obviously the most common, most trending Pokemon that we see in Battle Spot right now.
Well, and then Kyle's got like that Alola Ninetales, which I kind of would assume have fallen off after 17. Just really kind of quick aesthetic note, I do like how half of Kyle's side really matches all the blue on there, and that's just kind of cool for me.
Yeah,
but,
it's a really cool aesthetic.
But like also like Hydreigon being there, you know, a Pokemon that's super weak to Fairy is kind of like everybody's favorite clingy boy.
It's gonna be a bit of a Joker pick, I think. It's something that's really weird against Heather's like biggest threats to it, namely Metagross and Tapu Lele. But I still think that it is something that potentially can be brought to, well, soak up earthquakes as well as do good damage to Incineroar.
Yeah, and so going into this round one, I think Kyle are kind of having to think about how to like combat the standard team, as Heather leads with Zapdos and Incineroar, most commonly known as Zapcat, has a lot of good like big tailwind pressure. But Kyle leading with that Incineroar, gonna get the Intimidate first, and he's gonna be able to have his Vanilla Ice on there, which is gonna be that Alola Ninetales. Both of Kyle's Pokemon are going to be getting their abilities up first. We get the Hail and we get the Intimidate going before the Incineroar, and the Zapdos on Heather's side of the field.
So here we see two different forms of setup going on. We have Heather trying to get the speed control with the Tailwind on Zapdos, while we have Ninetales with what is probably Aurora Veil or an Ice-type attack towards the Zapdos to check it, maybe even an Icy Wind, and Landorus can deal with the Incineroar that threatens Vanilla Ice, the Ninetales. So that, you know, his setup chances with the Veils is just not an Ice maybe. He gets to actually get it off and get the damage reduction.
Oh man,
Sorry.
I appreciate that so much. That was. But Incineroar using that fake out onto that nail is going to try to stop that Aurora Veil, as Rock Slide on Kyle's Incineroar going to be connecting with both. Sorry, on that Landorus connecting with the Incineroar and the Zapdos, and that Alola Ninetales is not going to be able to get any sort of move off because of that fake out, as Heather rounds up this turn with that Tailwind. So that Ice maybe went to definitely not.
Oh yeah, I mean, I think here it is something that probably has to be switched out because, well, I guess that depends on the speed of the Incineroar, but generally Incineroar's paired with Tailwind are easy to outspeed Mega Metagross, which will also outspeed Alola Ninetales.
Yeah, and like I think from Heather's side too, we saw that really classic sort of why people like to lead Incineroar and Zapdos. You have the fake out, you stop something from attacking, and then you kind of just free to take damage, but you also get that Tailwind and that speed control up now, and so kind of, you know, favorable in Heather's, it's favorable for Heather right now.
Yeah, it really shows the power of the fake out move, the pressure it applies, and the way it limits certain team selections.
And like you had said, that below Ninetales is going to be really pressured to kind of switch out, so does switch out for the Hydreigon as the Landorus on Kyle's side manages to survive this hidden power from the Zapdos on there, leaving it to go free for another Rock Slide, and get a lot of damage on the Incineroar, and it's definitely a critical hit, so nice call on that. But now we
that
know
was actually bad for Kyle because that activated the berry. Well, I mean, after the hail, actually, that might have activated that anyways. Yeah, I'm not sure about that, but
But Heather is now free to round off that turn, going for that Flare Blitz into that Hydreigon. Not going to do that much damage just because of that like resistance on there. Does take the knockback from there, and Landis actually getting knocked out by Kyle's own weather that he brought, and still in Tailwind for Heather's side, so has a couple more turns to be able to capitalize on that speed.
right. I think maybe going into this game, Kyle perhaps didn't expect the fake out Tailwind lead because it's something that like kind of orientates towards hard setup, even though Tailwind itself isn't impactful enough to be like a setup move that completely defines a game most of the time. But you know, here Heather has elected to play to that kind of strategy, and I don't think Kyle was necessarily prepared for that with the leads and the back Pokemon that he actually brought.
And like especially kind of hard to like with that fake out pressure means so kind of stopping any sort of strategy that Kyle had in our checks. But we do get that Alola Ninetales back onto that field, so no fake out pressure from Heather's side. So you know maybe Kyle will go for that because maybe his Hydreigon's going to be that heavy hitter he wants on this team. We do know that Landorus was also kind of that heavy hitter, was able to use Rock Slide that twice.
Oh yes.
But now that Roost from Heather's side, with that Zapdos going to be getting that health back, a move that's been seeing a lot more usage. Now we do get the Aurora Veil from that Ninetales, going to be kind of that like reflect on light screen in one, so gonna be there for a couple of turns as long as that hails up. But we have Earth Power from Hydreigon, gonna pick up the knockout on that Incineroar, and gets also the critical hit.
I'm not sure if the critical hit was actually impactful because of the fact that the Incineroar was using a berry. Usually the common benchmark for berry Incineroar is to survive Gigavolt Havoc from Tapu Koko under electric terrain. So Earth Power is super effective. I think that like fits in that range where like after some chip damage you will faint to it.
And Heather bringing in this Tapu Lele, it kind of brings in the thing that I was expecting to see a lot more in 18, where we have weather and we have terrain up on the field at the same time. Activating the Psychic Seed on that Zapdos is going to raise its special defense, so going to make it a little bit trickier to kind of take out, especially now that we know that Hydreigon has that special Earth Power move. Can't touch Zapdos, but you know, might lend itself to other special attacks. And even Ninetales is just kind of a special attacker in general, but that Zapdos is now going to be a little bit tougher.
Yeah, even though Kyle did get what he wanted with the Aurora Veil, I feel like Heather is ahead in positioning right now in terms of the way the Psychic Seed on the Zapdos really limits the amount of damage Hydreigon can put in, regardless of its item, whether it be Specs, Z-Move, Life Orb, or even a more defensive item.
And so Kyle actually opting for Double Protect, going to burn out that last turn of Tailwind on here. Heather's Lele going to be going for that Moonblast as we have that, I think that was a Thunderbolt from the Zapdos. Not going to be connecting obviously because of that Double Protect. Did I miscount my Tailwind turns? I think I did. So probably one more turn left of Tailwind on Heather's side. Whoops.
Yeah, but I still like this play. I think Double Protect is very underrated, and maybe this hints at Kyle bringing a more aggressive lineup, and that reluctance to switch in is something that Kyle will have to review and maybe think about coming into game 2. But it's like, yeah, the Hydreigon switch was fairly natural because, oh, well.
Into a Metagross. Oh. Yeah. Which actually he kind of, you know, if that Zapdos isn't using any sort of like Heat Wave, he does kind of get that in for free because now that Lele is protecting, the Hydreigon can switch out, not wanting to take that sort of Moonblast that it could have had as that Blizzard connects into that Zapdos. That Psychic Seed really showing why it's so important to have on the Zapdos. Manages to get that Tailwind up as that hail expires.
Yeah, so I guess Kyle is. So I'm assuming a Mega Metagross here, where I feel like its ability to outspeed and KO Tapu Lele on the spot will force a switch. So I think despite the Tailwind, it might be possible for Ninetales to just attack, because I feel like Zapdos is not in a position to apply pressure, whereas Lele can elect to attack, but that will come at the cost of being knocked out by a steel attack.
Right, and that's one of those things where you kind of have to like decide what do I want to lose, and Heather not wanting to lose that Lele switches it out for her own Metagross. So now we've got, it was kind of like half around here as Zapdos roosts on Heather's side, gets back all that HP on there. This bird is just not going to be wanting to go anywhere at all. But Freeze Drive from Ninetales is going to connect into that Zapdos. Gets the freeze as well. That's an interesting animation that I didn't realize it does that. But Ice Punch also doubling up into that Zapdos spot, so now the Zapdos is going to be frozen. Not going to be able to do any sort of attack, but it did get the Tailwind up, which I think, you know, it's kind of its most important job.
Yeah, but the Metagross being in the back is sort of weird for Kyle still. Like, the freeze is putting him in a really good spot, but I do feel like the Metagross mirror is going to come down to, well, differences in the way they are trained, really. Some elect for a more speedier set, some elect for a more bulky set, and I think the way they interact is going to be a very big deal.
And also, Kyle didn't Mega Evolve that previous turn, but Heather's choosing to evolve on this first turn that her Metagross is out. Also, Kyle has a Hydreigon on the back, which can kind of deal with that Metagross. That Ninetales on Kyle's side going to be protecting itself, not going to take damage, as Metagross on Heather's side goes with the Iron Head into that super effective slot. Zapdos turn 1 Thaw does get the chance to use Thunderbolt, hits into that Metagross, doesn't do a lot of damage, but Metagross going for the Ice Punch once more onto that. Zapdos going to pick up the knockout here. Again, no Mega Evolution from Kyle, so now I'm wondering if he's saving or if it's not a Mega at all.
I don't think there's an Intimidate user to play around here actively, so maybe that revealed its item. One thing that I wish I did in the last turn was using Feedwing. I'm not sure if it made that big of a difference, but I feel like it was just better chip on Metagross as well as covering for a potential Ninetales attacking.
Yeah, and now we've got this Tapu Lele in this.
But that's relatively inconsequential, right? This is I think this is
It's a good spot, I think, for Kyle right now.
Yeah, I think Kyle can like play aggressively and sort of out pressure with like more numbers here, but you never know. Like depending on the set that the Tapu Lele has, it might create some. Well, not just that, but also the filler move on the Metagross.
Ooh.
Oh, there you go.
Alright, so Stomping Tantrum from Heather's Metagross going to connect into Kyle's Metagross. Does some good damage on there, but not enough to kind of knock it out, even in a non-Mega form, as Heather doubles up into that Metagross. Doesn't get a lot of damage, even on that Psychic Terrain because of the resistance, but Iron Head from Kyle's Metagross picks up that knockout onto Tapu Lele, leaving Heather's Mega Metagross versus this 3-mon team on Kyle's side, as Tailwind on Heather's side does expire, and no more Psychic Terrain.
Yeah, momentum has fully shifted around Kyle. I thought that he made a call to switch, but technically didn't get it right. But his Metagross is obviously very bulky, and that allowed him to survive both hits and, well, get the KO that he needed on the spot. So I think this game 1 is going to be fairly swung in Kyle's favor, but I guess we'll never know. We'll see. The Ice Punch onto the Hydreigon, right?
Yeah, and so Heather Ice Punching that protected Hydreigon, leaving Kyle's Metagross free to attack. Was that a Thunder Punch? Ooh, very nice on there. And I would like to say, I think Kyle's ability to get that Aura Veil up also is paying dividends right now here as well. And, and kind of like, I think that turn where he double protected is kind of where it kind of shifted for him, because it allowed him that switch into that into that Metagross. And kind of switch back and forth. And now that he's bringing in this Hail setter again, like this Alola Ninetales, he's got that chip damage onto that Metagross, so even if Heather's Metagross protects, it's going to be taking damage at the end of every turn. This Ice Punch going into that slot where that Hydreigon was, really good call. As Thunder Punch once more.
Electing for Thunder Punch twice, this is that might be revealing in terms of what set the Metagross is. It's very uncommon to have Thunder Punch on a Metagross set, and obviously we're not seeing a Mega Evolution, so maybe it is running some other item, and I think that's something that Heather can understand and sort of like adapt going into it.
You guys can't see my face, but I'm like, the thought of somebody not running Mega Metagross on the team is kind of baffling to me. It's not something I've ever considered, but Kyle's kind of showing that it really works well.
Kyle has used non-Mega Metagross in 2016, where he has won a lot of PCs in the local area with the Groudon Yveltal team, so he has experience using it. Maybe it's the same set.
Who is this? Kyle, what is this? But I mean, again, like, Heather kind of like in this kind of tight spot, not being able to really do a lot of damage to Kyle with just this one Metagross and a lot of like single target attacks. Like we see the Stomping Tantrum does go into that Metagross, so that Protect on Kyle's side, it kind of just burns that Protect here, leaving it free to take an Iron Head next turn. But we also know that Hydreigon has the Earth Power.
Yes, but I think he could have played a little bit more aggressively there, maybe going for a Thunder Punch again to get the potential paralysis.
That's a fair point. And
like when you're outnumbering your opponent, I just think overall it's more consistent for you to be on the offensive, because your opponent's the one with more to lose, so you want to punish that risk that your opponent's taking.
Alright, and Hydreigon protecting itself this turn. Ninetales, not going to be able to go for that second protect, but makes the right call this time as the Ice Punch goes into that protected slot. Aurora Veil once more from Ninetales, going to be lessening a lot of the damage that Heather's going to be trying to put. So again, Heather having to make these 50-50 calls, and now going to be doing even less damage because of that Aurora Veil.
One thing good about Aurora Veil as a move is that it's 2 screens in 1, and screens are good for the fact that critical hits don't ignore screens like stat boosts and opposing and the user's attack drops. So being able to boost your defenses outside of stat changes really gives you that well, resistance to losing to crits, really. Just even if this Ice Punch is a critical hit, maybe there's a chance that he can live it.
Oh, no.
Oh,
So
maybe
even
not.
without a critical hit, that Hydreigon doesn't live it. So that tough possibility really coming in handy with that Mega Evolution. But the Blizzard from that Ninetales is going to be doing a little bit more chip on it. Now Kyle just has to cross his fingers and hope.
I think this is a protector, and I think
Protector.
Kyle has to protect here because like
The chip damage from the hail should be enough.
because like Metagross is faster because there was no Icy Wind -1, so like Heather's gonna go for Iron Head, and that's going to be a ×4 weakness. No matter how much resistance you stack on Ninetales, you're going to get knocked out at half health.
Yeah, and so like you said, the protect turn for Kyle here is from the Iron Head. That
It should
hail
KO.
chip damage. Oh no, it stopped at the exact turn that
Hmm.
he needed it to.
That's what I get for not keeping track of timers, but that was unfortunate. I don't think Kyle
hard.
expected that either.
Yeah, so Iron Head over here going to be picking up that knockout really easily onto that Ninetales. That was actually really close. I honestly
Really
thought
back and
Kyle
forth.
had it, but I think for him, the moment that he lost was that protect turn where he protected the Ninetales and lost his Metagross. And
Yeah, I think that was something that was relatively preventable, and you know, it's something that like kind of annoys you as a player that's in that situation. But obviously, Kyle's somebody who has made to the finals of a regional. He has the mental fortitude to recover from this and just say, "Hey, I kind of didn't play the best here, but now I know
But that's
better."
something you can adjust to.
Exactly, yeah. And there's more information given in both sides.
And, you know, now, like, Heather kind of knows, like, this Metagross is not Mega Evolving, so what else could it be? Kind of fishing for maybe that information. And once more on Kyle's side, we have the Hydreigon, Charizard, Metagross, Landorus Theron, Ninetales, Alola Ninetales, I keep wanting to say Aurora, and Rotom Wash. And on Heather's side, we have that Metagross, Tapu Lele, Landorus Theron, Zapdos, Incineroar, and Gastrodon.
One thing I want to talk about from Game 1 is the moveset on Kyle's Ninetales. He revealed Freeze Dry, which might deter Heather from bringing Gastrodon because it's quadruple effective with the Freeze Dry modifier. So maybe that means there's room for Rotom Wash to deal with the Intimidators without really being scared by them. Especially because Rotom Wash has Levitate, so it doesn't really take damage from Landorus.
Yeah, and I think, you know, Kyle has like options. I think what Kyle brought, though, was actually really good. Like, the only unfortunate thing was the fact that his own Landorus was knocked out due to his own weather, as opposed to, you know, something else from Heather's side. And I think Heather, if she could have capitalized, I think, a little bit more on the whole Lele, like Tapu Lele, Metagross on psychic terrain, she could do a lot more damage with that. And it's kind of scary, I think, for her side, though, because that Hydreigon on Kyle's side is also that threat. Can take psychics, so it won't be affected by them.
That's true. I also want to point to the way both players use Landorus this game, but especially Kyle in terms of how he plays around the Hidden Power Ice that was revealed by the
That was so
Zapdos.
crazy.
That's
So
something that
happy with
completely swung that turn, the positioning, and that just forced Kyle to start pretty behind on board. And you know, that's something that Kyle won't do again because now he knows. Usually Heat Wave is more common as a filler on Zapdos, so
Yeah.
I feel like most players don't assume Hidden Power Ice even though they invest to live it.
Okay, and so, you know, Heather kind of changing up her lead a little bit, going with double Intimidate, switching out that Zapdos for the Landorus Theron as her lead, and Kyle also going for a little bit of a change, having that Rotom Wash, so like you mentioned, a good time for him to bring that in, and the Hydreigon on his side, we've seen it, again, like, only actually use Earth Power and Protect against the Incineroar, so we know it's not any sort of, like, choice item on here, and I don't think we've actually seen that Landorus from Heather's side yet. We've only seen Landorus on Kyle's side, and this Rotom Wash is also a new player, so two Pokemon kind of being able to really, deal some damage onto that Incineroar.
Yeah, and Landorus has her pretty berry, so it's a pretty difficult guessing game to really do.
Ooh,
So
Heather not going to want to sacrifice that Incineroar, switches it out for the Zapdos, maybe kind of like fishing for that attack from Kyle's Hydreigon, as Hydreigon actually goes for Protect this turn, so not going to get hit by anything, going to be at full health in this, as Landorus goes for the U-turn into that Hydreigon spot, so not going to be able to switch out like Heather wanted to, as the Will-O-Wisp, commonly known as Will-O-Mist, actually connects onto that Landorus, which is exactly what Heather wanted to avoid. Now that attack is going to be just not very good.
to me, that was very unexpected coming from Kyle. I figured that as a Rotom player with the Incineroar and Landorus in front of you, I thought he would go for a Hydro Pump, but obviously that might be too obvious, and Kyle is playing some sort of mental games here with his opponent where he's trying to call his opponent's switches, those so-called clever plays that, you know, if you can be sure that it's happening and you get it right, then that could swing the game. So
Yeah,
yeah,
and
very
you
well
know,
played from Kyle.
and this turn now, Heather being able to connect that U-turn into that Landorus, into that Hydreigon, going to be able to go back to her and choose which Pokemon she wants to send out here. But getting that burn, I think that previous turn is going to really hurt her later on, because that damage output from Landorus is usually kind of what you are banking on for a lot of your damage, especially I think in a team like this where Metagross and Landorus are kind of your big hitters, and she does bring in that Metagross onto that slot right now. But Hydreigon going for the taunt onto Heather Zapdos, revealing that, going to try to stop it from using Tailwind, and exactly does that this turn, as Electro Web from Rotom going to lower the speed onto both of these Pokemon connects. So now both these Pokemon are at -1 speed, so different form of speed control from Rotom, from Kyle's side.
I really like the way Kyle is mixing up his game plan / his end game as opposed to the previous game. Obviously, that's enabled by the different Pokemon that he brought, but I just think that ability for him to identify in a flash that certain moves were not as optimal, and not trying to repeat those same decisions on the next game, I think that shows that this game might be a lot closer than we might have thought. Obviously, game 1 was very back and forth, so I would like to see more of this back and forth information game going on between both players. It's fun to see.
I really like that taunt. I think that was a good call from Kyle, especially because he didn't show it at all last match. But now his Metagross is going to be switching into that slot where the Hydreigon is.
Very clever.
So, but Heather going to be switching out for her Incineroar, so going to get it and Intimidate into that Rotom once more, but because of clear body from Metagross, not going to be intimidated here. And I think that's probably part of the reason why Kyle isn't Mega Evolving this, or maybe isn't using it as a Mega Evolution. But Will-O-Wisp connecting to the Incineroar doesn't actually connect because of that Fire typing, as Zapdos uses its hidden power for minimal damage onto that Metagross.
Yeah, with Kyle being more aware of Zapdos, I think that allowed him to bring a very specific lead that maybe he was too scared to bring last time. And obviously Heather's adjustments earlier, I think in terms of their leads, it was just really bad for Heather. So right now she's in the phase of stabilizing. She's behind on board, and she needs to make some, I think, out-of-the-box decisions to get herself out of the situation that Kyle is kind of imposing on her.
Right, especially because, Heather is now aware that Will-O-Wisp is a threat to behold, and Landorus can be switching out from that Metagross on Kyle's side for that Landorus. Going to intimidate the Incineroar and the Zapdos as well. A little bit more important on that Incineroar, as Rotom uses Hydro Pump, connects into this slot here. I think anything that was going to be there was going to be a lot of damage from there, but manages to actually activate the berry instead of picking up that knockout onto the Incineroar, so it is going to be around to either do some damage or fake things out for another day. And Thunderbolt connecting to that Rotom, not going to do that much, but Flare Blitz connecting from that Incineroar into this Landorus does some good damage, almost gets it down to half, but that recoil damage, thanks to that berry, doesn't knock it out. And that taunt on Heather Zapdos does end, so she's going to be free to use Tailwind next turn.
Having said that, I think Rotom's Electro Web is going to give him a very good shot at mitigating and perhaps negating the speed boost if he can use it for 2 turns.
And Heather switching out her Incineroar, going for that burned Landorus, but gets another Intimidate into this Pokemon. Again, it doesn't really matter that much for that Rotom, which is, I think, now at -3, while this Landorus is, I think, only at -1 right now, but does manage to get the Rock Slide to connect with both Pokemon. Does some really good damage to that Zapdos. And it is also a critical hit because of that, but Rotom using Thunderbolt, going to pick up the knockout on there, denying Heather any sort of speed control. That Electro Web paying dividends right now, getting that minus speed, and also keeping her from using Tailwind.
Yeah, that was... I think Kyle's in the driving seat, and he has been since turn 1. I would have liked to see more bold predictions in these kind of games where everyone's trying to switch and play like a stable long neutral game. I feel like a very good way to defeat a player that plays in that kind of way is to try to exhaust their options by going slower than them or overwhelming them by going faster. And I think Kyle is applying pressure while also using these tech moves that he hasn't revealed to get the speed control advantage and translate that to an advantage in positioning.
Right, and especially because, like you said, he's kind of like just understanding that, and I think Heather playing that game of Intimidate Cycles, it's kind of hurting her right now because that leaves Kyle to be like, okay, I know you want to intimidate these Pokemon, so let me punish that by burning them or by attacking them, or like doubling this Pokemon that you're going to use for that speed control. And I think what I find interesting is that both Heather and Kyle have had like that Zapdos and that Rotom Wash in that spot from the beginning, and that slower Pokemon wins out in the end against this, as Kyle goes for the switch into his own Metagross, And Rotom actually finally
Double
switching out
switch.
on Kyle's side for that Hydreigon, which we know has that taunt to really stop that Zapdos. And Mega Metagross from Heather's side gonna be making an appearance.
I think Heather here must realize that Kyle has been very heavily pressuring her Zapdos, because even if he knows that the Hidden Power Ice is there, it's still very threatening, because in this particular game, both Hydreigon and Landorus were brought, which are very viable targets for Hidden Power Ice. So being able to eliminate that Zapdos from the get-go has been so favorable for Kyle.
Yeah, and that turn just ended with that Rock Slide from Landorus connected with both Pokemon, not doing a lot of damage. That burn really kind of showing why people hate it so much. And that Metagross going to the Ice Punch into what was the Landorus on Kyle's side.
Yeah, I think we're gonna see more switches. Maybe protect the Hydreigon and switch Metagross out just to play around the Landorus baby, because I think between Ice Punch and Earthquake, it's really difficult to find a safe switch with the Pokemon that Heather has at the front, despite the burn. But Heather goes for a switch, and that's totally fine, because Incineroar is still something that has Fake Out pressure right now, so even if the Intimidate doesn't go on the...
Onto that Metagross.
Yeah, go on the Metagross, I still feel like with that Fake Out, yeah, there we go, that Landorus switch is now going to be a lot more scared, I guess. Just having that Fake Out there as often as possible is very scary, I think, for a player that is trying to end the game in like a timer, like what Kyle was trying to do, I think. Maybe I could be wrong there, because obviously there's been a lot of intricate defensive switching, but I think Kyle's goal really is to just go all out offense as much as possible.
Yeah, actually Kyle goes for Protect on his Hydreigon for that turn, and that Landorus switching from that Metagross. As Heather's Metagross goes into an Ice Punch on the Hydreigon protected slot, I think Heather's kind of just trying to play catch up to Kyle at this point, because Kyle has been showing that he's making these calls and these predictions really well. He's protecting the right Pokemon, he's switching in when he needs to, and on this turn he's switching out that Landorus for that Metagross, which again, thanks to that Clear Body, even if it had stayed on the field, wouldn't have gotten any sort of attacks that lowered. Takes that Fake Out really well, gets in that free switch in as the Ice Punch goes into that same spot, leaving this Hydreigon free to use its Z-move, which we didn't see before.
Yeah, we didn't see that in game 1.
So again, Kyle really showing that he's like knowing, he is reading Heather's plays right from the get-go.
Not a standard team, chock full of unorthodox stuff, and he's revealing them one by one, almost like a resource. He's using it over the course of the game. He's basically saying, I'm going to give you these quizzes, these questions, and if you get them wrong, you're basically going to lose. Yeah.
And now this Hydreigon using that Black Hole Eclipse gets that easy knockout on the Metagross, going to leave Heather only with these two Pokemon, her Incineroar and her Landorus, both of which as good intimidators against usually Mega Metagross, which Kyle has never shown, and that Clear Body just making it still of a big threat because of the fact that it has that high attack set and is able to kind of go after both of these Pokemon. And that Hydreigon, yeah, sure, you get intimidated, but I mean, you're Hydreigon and you've shown, we know you have a Dark type move, but we also know you have a special Ground type move, so what do you care about those intimidates?
Yeah, I think what Heather should be doing here is thinking about game 3. I don't want to sound dismissive of a miraculous outcome, because this is Pokemon, things can happen, but in a very grindy metagame like this, where intimidate users are at a premium and many of the best Pokemon are able to fill multiple offensive roles while being defensive, I think being at a position of 4-2 with a burned Landorus is very detrimental. So I think what Heather needs to think about is how to adapt to Kyle's sudden emphasis in surprise techs as well as positioning, because Kyle has played at a very high level in this game, but it's also something that after a while becomes very linear. The teams kind of play themselves as you make these switches and pivot around certain Intimidate users.
And speaking of switching, Kyle does switch at the Hydreigon for that Landorus, gets the Intimidate once more onto both of Heather's Pokemon. As you can see, this Landorus, both on Heather's side being burned and intimidated, isn't able to do that much damage, but that Metagross, because of those no Intimidate things like Clear Body, picks up that knockout really easily on Heather's Landorus, leaving this Incineroar just kind of against Kyle's Pokemon. And even though this Flare Blitz will connect and knock out that Metagross most likely, it does not. Oh wow,
that must have some defense investments. Nice.
And to be fair, we actually also have not seen a Protect from this Metagross at all.
Oh yeah, maybe that's all 4 move kind of set. That's exciting.
But
that's exciting.
That's crazy, because now this Pokemon here is just kind of sitting there like that's a 4-0 sweep right there, which is gonna force us to this kind of game 3. And I think Kyle adjusted so well and was able to kind of understand that hey, he needs to protect the right Pokemon. And I think the hardest part about that game was making those 50-50 calls every single time, because that's what they kind of are.
Yeah, they are. I think Heather needs to kind of take that to heart and play Mega Metagross in a very unorthodox way, because it is a very strong Mega in a vacuum. It is probably one of the best in terms of typing, offensive, defensive, synergies, but it's somewhat predictable. You can run certain moves to mix them up, but in a best of 3, you're going to run into situations where you have to guess their switches. And I think if Heather can make those reads and get them to work, then I feel like the way the game went in game 2 would have been very different.
And I think too, one of the most important things is that Kyle switched out for that Rotom Wash, and that Rotom Wash, especially with that speed control, was able to kind of pivot things in Kyle's favor.
Right.
He knew exactly when he was able to go after that Zapdos and deny Heather that Tailwind, which we know for her in game 1 was really important for her as well, because having that speed control and being faster than Kyle gave her the opportunity to attack and go faster for that. I think Heather leaving behind that Tapu Lele might have been potentially a mistake, because it's kind of hard, besides that Metagross, for Heather to really hit that Hydreigon. And that Hydreigon, with that Z move and the ability to kind of just like go after that Incineroar, makes it kind of a scary Pokemon.
Yeah, obviously they both hurt each other very much, Lele and Hydreigon, but I think Kyle's team is built in a way that can position Hydreigon into these situations.
And so Heather actually leading with Tapu Lele and Zapdos, and that Zapdos we know has Psychic Seed, so you know it is going to be a harder Pokemon to take out. Like that we had seen in game 1, that Zapdos, as soon as it got that Psychic Seed, so much harder to knock out. As the Intimidate does actually go first on Kyle's side, and now we get that activation of the Psychic Seed because the second trade from Heather's Tapu Lele, and that pressure going to round it out. Just going to consume PP, but I think Heather, good adjustment.
Yeah, for sure. This is something that I think Heather's ahead at in terms of the board positioning, because she front-loaded her value with Zapdos and the Seed. It's something that generates a lot of value at a short period of time, and it sticks, but you can't switch out or you lose the boost. So by making this commitment, she is trying to basically say, last time you controlled the early game and I lost, so this time I'll control the early game, similar to what I did in game 1.
And Kyle actually going to be switching out his Rotom Wash, which he kept in for a really long time in game 2, but going to be switching it in for that Hydreigon in front of this Tapu Lele. But this Landorus going to be connecting that U-turn into the Tapu Lele slot, does some good damage, almost gets it to half health. Going to be switching, going back into Kyle's party as he chooses what Pokemon he wants to send out against this kind of, you know, adjustment from Heather, this Zapdos, which is going to be really hard to hit. And now he brings in this Metagross, which is going to benefit him so well from terrain if it has Psychic type moves. And Heather Moonblasting into that Metagross. If that was into the slot for that Hydreigon, woo, that would have been a whole different ballgame.
Oh yeah, Heather and Kyle reacting to that. It's like, oh, like that could have totally gone that away.
Yeah, and so Heather rounding off that Tailwind, and from where we are, Kyle breathing a sigh of relief that Hydreigon switch in did not get knocked out because of that Moonblast.
Yeah, that just made my heart skip a beat.
I was a little bit afraid too.
Yeah,
like,
that Moonblast moving, that was really scary. The moment of truth, right?
And I think, you know, going after that Landorus, kind of understanding, hey, you know, those rock slides, they might not have done anything last round and like in game 1, but those hurt if they can connect continuously, because those flinches, I mean, those are hard to come back from sometimes, you know? And Heather actually switching out her Tapu Lele for Gastrodon, so another switch from here. Oh my gosh, it's so cute.
So this is her response to Rotom Wash, it seems, but in this particular case, I think it's also well matched against the Metagross, because without Tapu Wash, we assume that the damage isn't as big.
Yeah, and Hydreigon protected because it didn't want to take that Moonblast from that Tapu Lele potentially, but now this Gastrodon taking that Iron Head from Kyle's Metagross really nicely, showing that leftovers at the end of the turn going to be a little bit trickier to really go against, because I don't think Kyle has anything against that Gastrodon.
Yeah, I like the way Heather played really patiently. I think players that are perhaps like newer to the scene might like to play more aggressively and just say, you know what, whatever, I'll just go for it and I'll get a free switch, or maybe they just think that there's something else they have that they can make things to work, just in terms of special techs. Like we used to see Ghost DMZ, Shadow Ball, Tapu Lele on Showdown, things like that. But obviously here, she elected towards a more standard set, so I think this information is something that Kyle can still use, even though I think Heather is making a good positioning play here.
And Thunderbolt once more from that Zapdos going into Metagross, going to do some good damage onto that. Not quite enough for knockout. And Dark Pulse, that last move, which is from that Black Hole Eclipse, going to that Gastrodon. But Heather picking up the knockout on the Metagross on Kyle's side with that Earth Power from Gastrodon. So, you know, Pokemon that, like, stuck around a really long time in Game 2 for Kyle. Like, honestly, what I want to say is kind of like what cinched the win for him because he was able to cycle it out.
I would have liked to see Kyle try to conserve his Metagross, but it's also very hard in the given lead that he found himself in, because he needed it for the defensive switch into Lele, but as soon as Heather saw the Metagross, it was heavily capitalized on, especially with information on Game 1 too, that the Metagross didn't use Taunt, so, you know, at this point you can make assumptions like that. Metagross is not going to Taunt, you're going to hit it super effectively.
And Rotom taking the place of its fallen comrade, that Rotom Wash, not going to be able to want to use Hydro Pump at all with that Gastrodon there, and that Storm Damage ability is going to raise its special attack if it's any Water type move gets redirected to it. And I think Kyle, you know, kind of now in the opposite side of where he was in Game 2, kind of have to really think about stuff. Hydreigon going for a Protect as opposed to that Dark Pulse. Not going to take any sort of damage. Hidden Power going into that spot where the Hydreigon protected as Gastrodon goes for the Recover. Gonna get back that health that it just lost, and plus that leftovers makes it a really tough Pokemon to kind of get rid of. Thunderbolt from Rotom though going into that Zapdos slot. Not going to be doing that much damage onto it, but Heather's Tailwind does expire, so Kyle, you know, should capitalize on as much as he can before that Zapdos gets another Tailwind.
Yeah, this is a very tough position for Kyle right now, actually, because I think that turn showed that Kyle was prioritizing Zapdos over Gastrodon, but with the Seed, Zapdos is not really taking critical damage, and Gastrodon just healed its health back, and now there isn't really a deficit that was kind of there when Gastrodon was removing the Metagross from the field.
Yeah, I mean, all the work that Kyle had put into doing damage into either Pokemon is just kind of now, like, defunct.
Yeah, now, like, I think now Heather is just trying to play in a way that doesn't really try to conserve Pokemon too much. I think
She's going for it.
No, that's a totally fine play too, I think, because I really don't think Gastrodon staying there was necessary.
And yeah, and Gastrodon does switch out for that Tapu Lele slot as we have the taunt from Hydreigon gonna stop Zapdos from using Tailwind, but it actually goes for a Thunderbolt instead into the Rotom slot as Will-O-Wisp connects into that Tapu Lele and burns it instead of that Gastrodon that was there just a little bit ago, which I can actually kind of respect and agree with that.
Yeah. He was trying to cover for like a physical switch, and I think, but I guess this is okay because the Lele switch happened on the last turn of Psychic Terrain, so now she has to switch out and back in for terrain, and that might mess with her future planning, the next 3 to 5 turns that she was thinking. Maybe she thought that with her boosted attacks she can pressure Rotom, but without the Psychic Terrain, I think it's very difficult for Lele to cleanly damage Rotom without activating the berry.
That's a fair point because like that Rotom is kind of like just there now hanging out. But Kyle gonna show that Black Hole Eclipse once more, gonna be attacking into either one of Heather's Pokemon at this point.
Yeah, I would have liked to see a Protector switch into the Lele because the speed tiers show that Hydreigon is slightly faster, 98 versus 95. So, assuming that this is speedy, very speedy in fact, that might be the reason why Kyle was able to go for that play, and that should knock out the Lele clean.
Yeah, I mean, this Lele was already like kind of like a half health, and so it does pick up that knockout on there. And you know, this kind of Pokemon that is super kind of like scary as an attacker. As Rotom holds on from that Thunderbolt, manages to eat its berry and get all that health back, is back into the green, just actually a little bit more above that. And Rotom goes for its own Thunderbolt into that Zapdos, gets into a little bit of half health on here. No berry. Again, we know that that Seed has really helped its special defenses, so the Zapdos is sticking around. But I think its offensive pressure isn't as much as Heather might want it to be.
Oh yeah, the Seed sets are very bulky, but I think the price they pay for that is the fact that they're very passive. You're mostly picking them for the utility of the bulk and the Tailwind, and that means that sometimes it doesn't do its job as an electric type very, very, very well, which is what you expect out of a top usage Pokemon.
Alright, and Metagross is going to be taking the place of that Tapu Lele, but no terrain for it to really take advantage of. And we do know that this is a Metagross, and so, you know, I don't think Kyle has any Intimidators that he brought to this match. I can't actually quite remember what his last Pokemon was. If we've
Maybe,
seen it, actually,
yeah.
I don't think we've actually seen it. But Hydreigon protecting itself on this turn, not going to take any sort of damage from either side of the from any Pokemon there.
Protect on the Metagross.
Yeah, but Metagross also protecting on this turn. As Zapdos goes for the hidden power into that Hydreigon, not going to do any damage into that. An Electro Web from Rotom.
Oh, Heather read that.
Yeah,
That's why she didn't Mega Evolve either. She was like, okay, like there's no reason for me to Mega because I don't want to play into the Speed Rod. So that's why Metagross is so good. Like, you don't always want that Mega, even though it's objectively very, very, very powerful. Clear Body is a very underrated ability, especially in a meta full of Intimidate users.
And that Zapdos is going to be at -1, but that taunt is going to be worn off now. And that Metagross, even though it did burn that Protect, doesn't have any damage on it, has that potential to Mega Evolve now, and, you know, can kind of maybe go after this Rotom and keep it from taking, get rid of those speed tiers against it. So just kind of think a tough spot for both players right now. Like that Zapdos, like you said, kind of like a passive Mon at this moment. But we do have that Mega Metagross with that tough possibility, going to give it a little bit of more boost to its attack. And going for the Ice Punch into that Hydreigon slot, going to do really good damage on there. Almost picks up that knockout, but Dark Pulse going to be free to use that onto the Zapdos. Almost gets that knockout on there, but one more Electro Web from Rotom should clean that up.
Yeah, there you go.
But more importantly, gets that speed drop onto that Metagross.
Yeah, I think that was pretty crucial. I understand why the Mega Evolution took place. Like, I do believe that the threat of Hydreigon is too much to just ignore. Yeah, so I guess that was kind of forced on like Kyle's end. It was just difficult to not really do that, so I can't really fault her for Mega Evolving.
And now this Gastrodon and this Metagross are going to be facing Kyle's team. And I think this Gastrodon, though, is still in a really good spot. Like, there's not a lot that Kyle has that can really touch it.
Yeah, like, I was thinking about the Z move, but now that it's already been used, I don't really think Gastrodon is going to get out of the field anytime soon.
And I mean, Gastrodon is like, it was a very frustrating Pokemon, especially if you don't have any counters for it. Rotom, not going to be able to touch that Gastrodon, does switch into that Landorus. Gets the Intimidate into that Mega Metagross because it did lose that Clear Body ability. Also manages to, you know, knock down an attack stage on that Gastrodon. Hydreigon protecting itself. We've only seen Recover and Earth Power from this Gastrodon. Metagross on Heather's side protecting. So, you know, kind of getting that switch into Landorus pretty nicely, but Scald from Gastrodon into that Hydreigon, into that protected Hydreigon slot. Kyle doing a really good job of keeping that dragon around.
Yeah, Kyle's also been concealing Landorus somewhat. He's been not really using it, so I think that was very good in this case because I feel like at -1, Landorus is now very much favored against Metagross. And not Gastrodon, but, you know, like, it can switch out and stuff, so it's not a big deal. I think at -1, it's just really tough for Metagross to do anything against the Landorus.
Oh yeah, and both of these trainers are actually really low on their your time.
Yeah, they should
as the Rotom Wash goes into that slot, Earthquake gonna hit both Pokemon on Heather's side of the field. That Metagross not protecting the string, gonna take some really big damage on that. I'm pretty sure this is a choice on Landorus. I think at this point.
Yeah, I think so.
Side. Not going to do a lot into that Gastrodon slot, but Metagross going to round out this turn with that Ice Punch into Landorus, going to pick up that knockout on there.
Yeah,
again, Kyle has a minute 24 left on his time, which I'm wondering what Heather has now.
I'm not worried about Kyle's time though, because with Kyle he has over a minute left, whereas Heather, her turns are somewhat more harshly limited.
Oh, she's got 4 seconds left.
She only has 4 seconds.
I think. Yikes.
You know, the timer.
I mean, if she can click buttons, she can click them in 3 seconds. She's got to she's got to go for it like right now. I mean, Kyle's sitting at a comfy minute and a little bit of a half on there.
Yeah, this format has a very, very short timer.
You don't know. Maybe she can go after it on here, but Hydreigon going for the Dark Pulse, gonna hit that Gastrodon, you know. But that Ice Punch from Metagross, gonna pick up the knockout finally on this Hydreigon, and maybe if this Gastrodon can go after this Rotom and knock it out, she might actually get it. But that Thunderbolt from Metagross knocks it out there, so it's Gastrodon versus Rotom. Gastrodon Scald. Is it gonna be enough? No, not even close. Yep.
I think this is gonna come down to time, but
I mean, Heather's actually technically out of her time now, so
this Kyle just has to stall here, right? Protect or
I mean,
whatever.
I don't even think it's gonna. I don't know if it's gonna show up. Yeah.
Oh,
so,
okay.
So that was a tough match.
Very close set. That was a nail biter.
So this is a warning to everybody who still hasn't done it. Practice with your time, and you know it's hard with only that 5 minutes and like 45 seconds, but that is ridiculous. Really good plays on it. I think in the end Heather would have won it just because that Rotom can't really touch that Rotom can't touch that Gastrodon at all. So really good adjustments each round from every player. So very good job to them. That was actually kind of a nail biting set. I was really afraid, especially that Moonblast switch in from that Hydreigon.
Oh yeah, that was really fun.
That was so terrifying.
The information management that Kyle showed, I think, is like a really big part of the best of 3 formats, enduring fun.
Yeah, he did some very good job of keeping some of the things secret that taunt that, you know, stopped that tailwind. We will be right back almost immediately with round 3 for you guys. Once again, I'm Regina.
And I'm Terry.
And we will see you in a little while. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Stay tuned.